only with Jesus, not alone with our own power. A little bit of my thoughts intercalated with Father Mike's words in the 262th Day from the Bible in a Year podcast. In this episode, it is mentioned the Herod death of John the Baptist. Yesterday, we heard the story of the parable of the sower and how there are some people who they hear the word and they like it. It springs up really quickly. And there's other people who hear the word and they like it, but they have worldly anxiety and other things that choke the word. Herod is kind of the incarnation of these things, right? So, Herod hated the fact that John the Baptist convicted him of his sin, and yet he liked to listen to John the Baptist. And so he wanted to kill him, but at the same he was compelled by this, and he was stuck. He was stuck in this place of sin, essentially, right? Kind of like dependency, addiction. And that can be so many of us, where we hate the fact that here I am sinning, and I just can't take that step to free myself. I can't take that step to allow the Lord to free me. I don't allow myself to reach out for Jesus to pull me out of sinking as Simon Peter did. And here is Herod, and it ends with tragedy, obviously the death of John the Baptist. But even worse, ends the tragedy in Herod's own life. Moving on, we have, the two feedings. Here we are, Jesus again, a miracle of wailing on the water, and it's remarkable. I love in Matthew's gospel how he recounts this. Not only how he recounts that the wind was against them, the waves were against them, how when they saw Jesus, they didn't think it was Jesus. They thought it was a ghost, and they cried out in fear, but immediately Jesus speaks to them in place of fear. And Jesus speaks to them in a place where they could die. People die on the Sea of Galilee all the time in these kinds of storms. People die all the time in the storms of addictions. And Jesus says to them, "Take heart. It is I. Have no fear," into those places in our lives where we're not just afraid, but we're actually afraid for a great reason. And sometimes not are we just afraid, but we're also maybe even tempted to be frustrated with God. The reason why they're out in the storm in the middle of the night is because Jesus told them to get into the boat and go out onto the lake. So you can imagine people a little resentful that the only reason I'm in a storm right now is because Jesus told me to go out into the storm. And so now I'm not only afraid, I'm also maybe angry. And Jesus says, "Take heart. It is I. Have no fear." I love what Simon Peter does next. And Simon says, "Lord, if it is you, command me to walk out on the water with you like you're doing." And this is really incredible because a lot of times, Jeff Cavins made this point so many times that I just want to make it to honor him. He's pointed out so many times and so clearly that a lot of times when we follow Jesus as Christians, we think that that means I believe in Jesus, and it does mean that. It means I think like Jesus, and it does mean that. It also means that we're called to do what Jesus does. And so, here is Simon who says, "Lord, if you're the rabbi and I'm the student, if you're the teacher and I'm the disciple, and the goal is for the disciple to be able to do what the rabbi does, then command me to come out to you on the water." Is that true? Or is it just like, no, it's you, and we're just kind of surrounding you. That's all this is? And Jesus says, "Come," which is amazing. Jesus doesn't say, "Ah, are you kidding me, Simon? In a second, I'll name you Rock, and rocks don't walk on water." But Jesus says, "Come," and Simon does the impossible for a moment. Yes, he sinks. Yes, Jesus rebukes him. "Oh, ye of little faith, why did you doubt?" But there was a moment there when Simon Peter was walking on water, when he was doing something impossible. And this is what we're called to when we're following after Jesus. We're called to not simply do what we could already do on our own power. We're called to do what we can never do on our own power, to get out of addiction. We're called to love in a way that we could never love if it was just us. Called to live in a way that we can never live if it was just us. And this is just remarkable. Only with Jesus. Not alone with our own power.